Doing? Welcome to Christian Heritage 3. My name is Doug Hibbard. I'll be your instructor for this term as we look at this class. The overall purpose of this class is to look at Christian heritage, the history of Christianity, and our heritage specifically, from the 1600s until the present day. That's a shorter period of time than either of your other Christian heritage classes will have covered. But it's a very action-packed period of time. One of the things that you will discover is that in the 1600s, from the 1600s to the present day, Christianity recaptured its global influence and its global impact. Instead of just being a church centered in Rome and Constantinople with little fingers reaching out to other places, we found that Christianity spread and it began to take on much more different local flavors in all of the places that we were after the Reformation, after the Catholic Reformations, and then Vatican II in the 20th century, as the Eastern Orthodox traditions spread, and as we reconnected with the global South, with the church in Africa, the church in South America, and the church in what we would call the Far East, Eastern Asia, in places like Korea, Japan, and China. And so we'll touch on many of those aspects in the course of the next 8 weeks. First, though, we need to deal with some introduction. I have to look at my notes that are here on the paper to make sure I get it right. Typically, I'm a Baptist pastor, and so I preach, and if I get caught off on point one and chase the rabbit until it's lunchtime, that's okay. As long as I quit at lunchtime, everybody's all right. But if I fail to cover the outline that I intend to test you on, you're going to feel a little bit cheated when it comes test time and you say, he never said point two. So, if you see me look off camera, I'm not checking my phone, I'm not checking my stock investments, buy low, sell high. Beyond that, I'm looking at the notes. So, here's what we want to talk about in the coming week. First, before we get too far into nuts and bolts, we want to rehash the why of studying our Christian heritage. So, let's hit that. First, as Christian explorers of history, we study history because it is the record of what God has done in the lives of His people. We want to know God, and so we learn history because as we look at history, we see the way that God has worked in the world around us. We see how He's worked in the good events and in the blessings of His people. We see how He's brought people through hard times, how He has brought people through persecution, how He's brought people through the various difficulties that we have seen. It can be a fascinating study to see the work of God in the lives of those who have gone through challenges like warfare around them, or the Great Depression, or the oppression of other societies. And so we'll look at those things. We'll learn about that. We'll examine how God worked in people's lives in moments like the epidemic of the Spanish influenza in the early 20th century, and how people learn to trust better, more fully in God through that. Second, as Christian explorers of history, we study history because it is the story of our community. Every one of us is naturally part of a national and cultural heritage that's a part of our community, that defines a part of who we are. Whether it's a state heritage, a family heritage, a region, or a country, a language, we have a cultural heritage. But as followers of Jesus, we also are a part of a community that spans the globe and spans 2,000 years. This is a part of our story. It's a part of what defines who we are. Both the good things that the Christian community together has accomplished and the things that we haven't done well affect the story of our family of faith. This is the story of our ancestors, our crazy aunts and deranged uncles, our odd cousins, our brave cousins, our grandparents and great-grandparents, those people that sit before us as examples to follow, as examples to avoid, and simply as people, to understand that the world has always been filled with people who have done what they can do in the situation around them. Third, as human explorers of history, we study history because it helps us clarify who we are and what we should do. Some of you are probably familiar with an old youth ministry illustration about the monkeys, the ladder, and the hose. But since I'm a preacher, I don't leave stories untold. Now, when I put the notes on the website so that you have them, you'll actually see the website link that verifies that this really did happen, and it was a social science experiment involving rhesus monkeys. Now, what they did is they took 5 monkeys and they put them in a monkey habitat with a ladder in the middle and bananas at the top. As soon as one monkey began to climb the ladder to go get the bananas, they sprayed all the monkeys down with cold water out of a fire hose, which did not please the monkeys. And the monkey climbing the ladder gets off the ladder, they don't get the bananas. When the next monkey goes to climb, they spray him again until they've reached a point that all 5 monkeys, every time they go for the ladder, get sprayed and they've quit trying. Then they pulled one monkey out and put in a fresh monkey. Why these people have a seemingly unlimited supply of monkeys is beyond me, but that's research for you when you can get federal grants. Church history academics don't get federal grants. We don't have monkeys. Anyway, as they go on, they put in a fresh monkey who's never tried to climb the ladder, never tried to get the bananas, never gotten the hose. The other 4 monkeys, as soon as that monkey looks up at the bananas and puts one foot on the ladder, the other 4 monkeys yank him off and keep him from going for the bananas. They leave it for a while. They trade out for another new monkey. Now you've got 2 monkeys who've never been hosed until they hit a point where you have 5 monkeys in the habitat. None of them will climb the ladder because all of them have taken a beating for trying to climb the ladder. None of them know why. Ultimately, history helps us learn something about ourselves. First of all, you're not a monkey. If you have never been told this, soak in that moment, okay? You're not a monkey. You're a human being. As humans, we can use history to learn what got us sprayed with a fire hose before now. And that allows us, in turn, to learn if our situation is different and root out the actual causes, and help us learn that perhaps, before we climb the ladder for the bananas, we should climb the other ladder and take the hose away from that guy. But we need to realize that we can learn, because sometimes we ingrain habits in our churches and our own lives based off of traditions, based off of what went wrong before, that it's true. Things did go wrong before. How can we avoid that? My own tradition as Southern Baptist was formed off of poor decisions. There was the bad theological opinion that human slavery was an okay behavior. We have to learn from that and not make that mistake again. And make sure that we also, though, do not fail to do right things because we made a wrong decision before. Mark Twain once said that experience is only the best teacher if you know how to process it. A cat that sits on a hot stove will never sit on a hot stove again, but also won't sit on a cold one. We have to learn to pay attention to that. Another reason that you're here as a seminary student, you have to have some history credit. Let's just cut to the chase. You may be in this class because, well, to be honest, you got to take 2 out of 3 Christian heritage classes, and you don't want to wait till next year and pick up either 1 or 2, whichever one you didn't take. I understand that. And you don't have to hide from that. You may be just a passionate New Testament person, and you just don't know why you're here. But you got to have the credit. I hope that as we go through these 8 weeks, you'll see a valid reason why you need this credit and why this helps you. But at the very least, it'll help you learn a little bit. It'll strengthen your writing skills. It'll strengthen your reading, and it'll give you a good experience. So that's the way it goes. You'll benefit from the discipline in reading and writing, and it'll help you with your history credit. Further, most likely you're in seminary because you are a servant of the Church of the Living God. Your desire is not just to know for your own sake, but to know to serve the church. Your church service will be affected as much by the more recent history in our time frame as it will be by the deep history. For example, the High Medieval era. It's unlikely that you'll be able to find the direct effects of a papal bull like Unum Sanctum in your local church. Now, you can trace the whole chart out and you can see how it did have an impact. But down in, very few people at your church are going to be aware of that. Very much of your church is driven not by a direct impact from it. But you can almost certainly find the effects of the First Great Awakening, religion in your community, or the impacts of the Enlightenment on theology and the practice of what we do. So, this will help as you serve the church. And finally, history is fun. Let's just nail this down. History is fun. Behind me is my history book wall. And that's not all the history books. That's just all the ones that I've hauled upstairs. My office is upstairs. I have no elevator because we're too cheap to put one in. But that's just the way it goes. We'll edit that out in post. But history is fun. Where else can you track hundreds of years of action? It's like that moment. You can have those moments like watching a horror film. As you watch it, and you go, don't go to the garage. You know the killer's lurking in the garage. You know it. As you look at history, you're able to say, I know what's going to happen if you sign that covenant. We know what will happen if you do this. Or those comedic moments where you just can't help but laugh. It's just there. There's fun here. There's excitement. If anybody ever persuaded you that history was just the memorization of dates on a timeline, then let me, on behalf of history-loving people the whole world over, tell you not to listen to those folks anymore, at least about history. It's about so much more. It's about how people interact with other people, how we involve in our environment, and it's wonderful to see because history is made by people as they work and live. Now, everybody got that? Let's take a breath. I would take a sip of my coffee, but I don't have my coffee. By the way, you wouldn't drink coffee if it hadn't been for the Pope. For those of you who don't know it, coffee was discovered and developed in Africa and in Arabia in Islamic territory. And there were those in Europe that opposed it as the devil's drink. And the Pope was the guy called in, and I'll look up the dates and we'll get this down, but they asked the Pope to weigh in on whether or not it was acceptable. And so after having a couple of cups, the Pope decided coffee was okay. And now, you know the rest of the story. The meme also goes around Facebook that coffee was introduced in Europe in about 1515. Martin Luther sparks the Reformation about 1517. Think of how much sooner we'd have held on to salvation by grace alone if we'd have just gotten a good cappuccino before then. Anyway, a word or two going forward, a word or two about methodology for history. Not knowing exactly what you've covered in previous classes, let me give you some of my background ideas for how we're going to do this. Now, I've had church history classes and regular history classes in college, seminary in both at B.H. Carroll and at a couple of other seminaries, and then doctoral work here with B.H. Carroll. So if you've had Dr. Bullock, you've had the main person who's taught me about history. So most of this will probably be fairly similar, but it's put my way and not hers. History seeks to answer a lot of questions about the past. It's the classic question words. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. Sometimes we may emphasize one question over another, but why is a question that we need to know some of the others to be able to answer. You can't ask, for example, why did the Puritans prohibit celebrating Christmas, without also knowing who are the Puritans and what's a Christmas anyway. So you see what we have to do. We need to be able to answer those foundation questions and then use reasoning to talk about the why. There are times also that memorizing dates is important. Usually it's even more important to understand sequences. And there's usually an anchor date somewhere in that sequence. We'll take an example from the Reformation. You should know Martin Luther, Wittenberg, October 31st, 1517. You should have that as an anchor, time, place, person, as an anchor who, when, and where in your mind for Christian heritage. You should also know Wycliffe and Huss, and Karlstadt, Zwingli, Calvin, Hoopmeyer, Tyndale, the Marburg Colloquy, and several other things about the Reformation. Wycliffe and Huss are before Luther. All of the rest of that come after Luther. And so you learn the sequence and anchor from Luther. The dates on Tyndale and on Wycliffe and on Huss and even on Tyndale are slightly less critical. But if you can keep things in the right order, it helps it make sense. Now, if I say specifically, you should know this date in a lecture or in a discussion point, it's going to show up on the test. You should know that date. Don't give me a, well, you said we didn't have to know all the dates. You're right. You don't have to know all the dates. But the dates that are said in class that you should know, you should know. I like the way, I also like the way that Dr. Bronner put this when I was in seminary in a far, far away place. Memphis. Not Egypt, not the cool one, but the one with the shiny pyramid that's now a gun store. Doing history as a Christian is always the examination of secondary causes. It's a temptation to answer the question, why did this happen? With, well, God did it, and then close the book and walk away. Honestly, we know that to be ultimately true. But we also know that God uses causation and interrelation of events. Baptist churches, for example, came to be because someone picked up their Bible, understood baptizo to mean a certain thing, and then went out to try to live that way in their church. We could say that God did it, but we're looking at how God did it. What pathways, what methods did God use? Those are the kinds of questions we're striving to answer. By the way, with Baptist, Smith, Helways, Huffmeyer, Williams, Luther Rice, Lottie Moon, those types of folks are important in the formation of who we are. So, that's some background on history and some background on methodology for this class. Now, the next thing that we want to hit, so we want to address some things about what our class is going to deal with. We're going to talk about, first of all, the world situation as we get started at the beginning of the class. Most of our class is going to focus heavily on the Western world, Western Europe, the United States, Canada, those portions. Although, as we come to the end, we'll fold back in the Eastern Orthodox community of faith, some of the things that develop in Africa and South America. But we're going to track primarily the heritage of the churches that we find in North America. The reason for that is it's a big world, and there's a lot of things happening. And if you had to track all the things that happen in Christianity from 1600 to 2020, you'd need either more hours in a day or more weeks in an 8-week term. One's impossible and the other's very, very difficult. So we'll move on with that. We'll touch on some of those things. We'll primarily also deal with events from a religion-first perspective. That is, while, for example, the colonial expansion into America has many facets, we're going to focus on the religious implications, religious motivation, religious results of what went on. Or, as another example, World War I has religious implications that drove its going on, its beginning, its end, some of the way it was fought. However, there are other parts of World War I that we'll ignore for the most part. Trench warfare, fascinating study, not relevant. So we'll move on from that. It's worth remembering that we're not doing the whole world, but the whole world has events happening. Africa has important things going on. The South Pacific has important things going on in their development and in their history. But the world events that we're studying are still mainly driven from this perspective for now. Now, one last thing is this, some course generalities and some basic information. Number one, the books are the key. I'll bring up high points in the lectures from your reading, but the key is what's in your textbooks. I'll try to help guide that, but if you don't do your reading, you're going to miss stuff that's important. We'll post a weekly discussion forum. I know the syllabus does not have that listed as graded. It's primarily there to aid you in discussing and seeing what I'm going to think is important out of the reading. Because we can't have a face-to-face class discussion to respect everybody's schedule. We can't do that every week. We'll do it in the forums. That's how we'll highlight what's most important. You get the idea? Y'all all smart enough to catch that hint there. If I put a forum question up about an individual, that person's going to make an appearance on a test. Okay? Research paper. The research paper is important because part of history is research skills. I'm looking for something that delves into subject matter in this time frame. You can find something that's a specific event. You can chase something that we don't do enough of. Maybe you're heavily interested in missionary history and we don't do enough of it. Grab a missionary and summarize their work and their life. There may be an aspect of world relations that you want to bring up or research. Look at the syllabus. There's a deadline in the syllabus for a research question due. Make sure you've shared with me what your topic is and we can interact on that. Finally, the tests. You have 2 tests. Your grade is 2 tests and the research paper. The forums and the readings will help make sure that the 2 tests go smoothly, along with this last thing about the test. When it's test week, I will upload a Word document that is the blank test for you to download and answer. The test will have a declared time limit, but it's going to be an honor system thing. If the test time limit is 90 minutes, you're allowed 90 minutes, but I'm going to trust you to watch the clock. Why? When I was in that seminary in a far, far away place, I had an online test one time that I failed because my computer glitched up on me and blew the timing. And that messed me up. I'm glad to help you with computer issues, but I'm not here to teach your computer issues or to grade you on if your computer messes up. Now that we're off of dial-up, we should all be, better off with these things, but that's not something that should be a stress. Likewise, most of you have additional life issues. You may have a child that you have to put back down for a nap in the middle of an exam. Pause your timer when we do that. But you'll be able to download it, you'll put your start time, your end time, and then upload it back to me. And that's the way we'll do those. And I will trust you with that, because I'd rather trust you with that than have you get a bad grade because the clock messed up on anybody. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to what you're trying to accomplish in your learning. It's a discouragement that you don't need. Please keep in mind, I'm here to help. You've got my email, you've got my phone number in the syllabus. Feel free to email, feel free to call. If you call me and I don't answer, please leave me a message, because if you don't leave a message, I'm going to assume that you sat on your phone and meant to call somebody else, and I will not call you back. So if you want to talk to me, either email me or make sure you leave me a message and say, call me, and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Okay? Thank you. Have a blessed day.